Hi, I'm Randy Robison. This is Life Today TV. I'm here with Toni Brinker Pickens, and I'm going to point out the last names because she's been involved in some very influential things. Brinker International, with her late husband Norman Brinker. To you and me, that means Chili's on the border, Maggiano's Little Italy, and the Macaroni Grill. And now she is married to T. Boone Pickens, a huge philanthropist, very successful, done a lot of great things. Welcome to Life Today.
My pleasure to be here. Thank you.
So now I know you come from pretty humble beginnings, yes?
I do.
Give me a little bit of background there.
I do. Born in Davenport, Iowa, moved to Plainview, Texas. My father was a chiropractor, and we moved to a little town in Alabama, north of Birmingham, when I was in the 3rd grade. So, but keep in mind, chiropractors way back when were considered akin to witch doctors.
Voodoo doctors,
So
right.
when they would ask me when I was a child what my father did, I would always say, "Oh, my father's a Zerone." And they go, "What?"
Right.
So,
Right.
but yes.
Right.
So.
And so, yeah, not quite the same, even financial category as doctors.
No.
Right?
No.
So, you have been very successful now, all these years later. And yet, with all the success, you have reached out to do a lot of things to help people. You're involved in philanthropy, you're involved in a lot of organizations that are trying to solve a lot of the problems, especially among the poor. What made you want to help people?
I think that somewhere along the line, God put his hands on both of my shoulders and said, "Young lady, just make sure that you give back. Make sure that this world is a better place than when you first arrived." I've always wanted to help people, and today is no different. I think today's environment is unfortunately one that people are most misunderstood. There's a lot of hate in the country. And I think that we as individuals need to stand up and speak out, get involved, and let us as ordinary citizens, which I consider myself one, to try and make a difference.
There's some hostility towards people that have been successful, the wealthy. How do you take that?
Well, I would like for someone to walk in my shoes for at least today, but it is to be expected. Some of it is promoted through the media. Some of it is just the general nature of people. But I think if you kind of look past that, what you have to do is just say, we're all in this together. Let's see if we can make this a better place. I'm really no different than the man who lives down the street or the one who might live in another city in the worst part of town. I get just as scared as they do. My father always used to say, we all put our clothes on the same way. And in reality, we do. At the end of the day, they all do the same thing. So.
You're doing something here in Dallas in October, if you're catching this before October of 2015. Tell me a little bit about what this meeting is and the purpose of it.
Well, I started an organization called Operation Blue Shield, which is an organization to bring citizens, ordinary citizens like you and me, law enforcement, first responders, and members of the local government to the table to talk. In the current narrative of hate, we can't sit around and just cast stones at each other and say, it's been this way, we've been wronged. We have reached a point in our history where we have to do something positive.
And you're doing it.
I am doing it, yes. Operation Blue Shield started about 6 months ago. We've been extremely successful. And one of the things that we do or have is a speaker series called The Power of One. Most people say one person cannot make a difference. I can assure you one person can make a huge difference. And on October 28th at Concord Church in Dallas, Pastor Carter's church, we are having Bishop Harry Jackson, Bishop Angel Nunez, and Reverend James Robinson, who will be our speakers. And the thrust of the whole conversation is the tremendous position that churches across the country can play in bringing our communities together.
Okay, so you mentioned my dad,
I do.
white guy. You mentioned Harry Jackson, know him, African American. And Angel Nunez is the third?
Latino.
Obviously, Latino, right? That's by design, yes?
Yes, that is by design, but it is also by desire. I had reached out to them, and each one of them said, before I had 2 or 3 sentences, said, we're all in, we want to help. So our country is a mixture of many different people, and whether our skin is black or white or brown, and whether we go to this church or that church, raised on one side of the track or the other, we're all in this together. And the churches play such a significant part in getting this message out.
Yeah, I think that's key. And I love the fact that you're involving the churches, because as demonized as churches and Christianity can be in this culture, the reality is historically the churches have often, if not almost always, been on the forefront of positive social change.
I agree.
So
I agree.
glad that you're doing that. I don't know how well you know Harry Jackson. You're going to love that guy.
I absolutely adore
You
him.
like- okay.
I do.
Yeah, one of my favorites. Now, I don't know the other gentleman, so I can't say, but I'm assuming he's just as wonderful. Okay, before I move on, because I want to hear a story, I want them to hear a story that you told me. The details on that meeting, if someone's like, okay, I've got time to make that, is it open to the public?
It is open to the public. We'll start at 7:30, and it will be over by 9
PM?
p.m.
Okay.
Yes, and it's Wednesday, October 28th at Concord Church.
And they can register on OperationBlueShield.com?
They absolutely can.
Great. So if you're interested in that, if you got time to do that, do that. If you missed it, maybe look for another event. Go to OperationBlueShield.com, see if there's anything coming to your area or ongoing in the future. So this is something that has already, in its infancy, produced some hard results, measurable results.
Correct.
Tell me that story. Tell the audience that story that you told me about one case that it changed everything for someone.
We have a series under Operation Blue Shield called The Power of One, and it is a speaker series. And at our first speaker series, we had a young man who attended, and during the course of the evening, we talked about the things that you should and should not do when you are pulled over by a policeman. One is to make sure that you do keep your hands on the steering wheel. 2 is not to step on the accelerator and move too fast.
Yeah.
But obviously to pay attention and do what you are told to do. Well, this young man about a week later was pulled over. It was dark, and so what he did is he tried to find a place that was lit, and so he drove about a mile and a half. And I know that he felt that the police were getting a little bit more agitated as he was going along. He finally found a place that he felt comfortable enough to pull over. Now, he passed about 4 or 5 or 6 of them on the way, didn't stop, but finally found one that he chose. As the car was stopping, he said, all I could remember is what you told me, Mrs. Pickens, in that series, and that was to keep your hands on the steering wheel. So the 2 policemen came up on either side, and he
Very
said,
intimidating.
Very intimidating,
Yes.
very, very intimidating. He said he looked to his right, and he stared into the eyes of the policeman, who looked into his eyes, looked at his hands, and back into his eyes. And he said, I knew then instantly I was not going to get hurt or killed.
He was that scared.
He was that scared. And the officer, in turn, gave him a warning, and in the end said, sir, I very much appreciate you keeping your hands on the steering wheel. Now, that man drove until he, I think, had gone home, and he told me, he said, I pulled my car over and I broke into tears. Because he said, in my community, what I have been taught for all of my life, and I am I think he's 45 or 46 years old, he said, is that if you get pulled over by police and you go down a dark street, you will be hurt or killed.
Wow.
So in our community, in a Caucasian community, that would never cross our minds. But he said, from here on out, my whole life has changed. And it changed because of the Power of One series that you had.
So he learned not to see the police as the enemy.
That is correct.
Yeah.
That is correct.
Yeah.
So for him, and he has since volunteered, and he has been at every speaker series.
Really?
He has been, and he will be at the October 28th as well.
Maybe I'll have some fans show up.
I hope so.
No, that is great. And you know, it almost sounds simple, but I've got 2 sons, both driving, and I've told them the same thing. You know, I got pulled over in Colorado a few months ago. Same thing, did this right here.
Correct.
You know, because they get nervous if you start, because I've reached over to get my insurance card out of the glove compartment. That makes them real nervous.
It makes them very, very
Yeah.
nervous.
So just knowing that, yeah, it does, it brings the whole thing down.
It does bring it down. And in our speaker series, the policemen were going through the things that you should do and should not do and why. So those are good pieces of information that people should hear, because even though you and I may not face the same circumstances, you being a male and me being a female, in terms of how we feel, we need to understand the mechanics, but we also have to take into account what that policeman is going through.
Sure.
Because their
They
intent,
never know.
They do not know. And their intent is not to harm anyone.
Right.
You know, they're human just like we are, and we have to remember that they may be our neighbors, but the only difference between you and the policeman is that when he gets up, he puts on a blue uniform and you put on a beautiful blazer.
Well, and I know I'm going home that night.
You do. I always leave my audience with that one thought. Please understand that in my world, my husband most likely will make it back home at 5 o'clock or 6 or whenever he gets through working. But in the officer's life, they don't know. So we need to be cognizant of the fact that the spouse all day long has to await for hopefully what does not come, which is a telephone call. And more heart-wrenching than that, imagine a child, a small child, wondering if mommy and daddy will make it home. And in the environment that we have today with the negative press about our law enforcement, which many cases, and most cases, is not justified, that seeps into their psyche. That's what we need to turn around. We need to bring our communities together.
Well, and you're actually doing something about it, which is wonderful.
Thank you.
So thank you for all the work that you're doing. OperationBlueShield.com, that's correct?
That is correct.
Check out the website and see if there's a way you can get involved, and we can, you know, make this world a better place. That's what we're here to do, and that's what she's here to do. And I thank you for your time and for your efforts to improve just everyday life in our country.
My pleasure and honor. Thank you.